What's up, everybody? My name is Mike Whitmire. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Flowcast, also proudly an inactive CPA, and the host of Blood, Sweat, and Balance Sheets, the podcast where we have on various finance leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, just to learn a little bit more about the ecosystem and try to improve our knowledge and maybe progress our careers, get better at the close, whatever. We'll see what comes about from it. But today, I'm very excited for our guest. We have a special guest. Not everyone has the background here in the affiliation to Flowcast that we're going to go into, but Bruce Duner, welcome to the podcast. Really excited to have you. You want to just kick it off with an introduction about yourself, some background?
Oh, thanks, Mike. I'm really glad to be here. From a finance perspective, it's funny. I like to make a joke that if you look at my LinkedIn picture, it really hasn't changed in 30 years. But because I love it just the way it was 25, 30 years ago. But I've been around in finance since I graduated from San Diego State in 1984, started with Deloitte and worked my way up into a CFO role, ultimately with a business called Wonderware. And then I grew up in Southern California and then made a big move to Atlanta for a new position here, and then ultimately have been a part of many software companies that are ultimately owned by private equity firms in the last 25 years.
And I love I think today will be really interesting. The private equity ownership model is a little different, but I think really, really good for running a healthy business, right? It's all about operations and optimization and really doing the most with every dollar that you have. So I love chatting with CFOs of private equity companies because you just run such a tight ship. It's really good stuff to see. So I think this will be helpful. I didn't know you were a Southern California guy. How'd you end up in Atlanta? I'd love to hear that.
I grew up a Dodger fan, just like you. I can see that.
Oh, nice. All right.
I know Tommy Lasorda, Steve Garvey, Ron Say, Bill Russell, David Lopes, and Steve Garvey were all my
those
heroes.
Were some great days.
Up.
Yeah.
So yeah. I grew up in Anaheim, and I worked at Disneyland, and found my way also working at Anaheim Stadium. And then ultimately went to school at San Diego State, and then started my career at Deloitte.
Oh, nice. So, yeah, were you a cast member at Disneyland? What'd you do?
I sure was. I was a sweeper. My grandfather called me a sanitation engineer.
Oh, very nice. Well, I do know, right, the sanitation was one of the big selling points of Disneyland, how clean it is there.
It's always clean. It's the best. It's literally the best.
My wife's a Disney lover, so I know a little bit too much about this, but I think it's like you at any point in the park, you can walk 50 steps and there's a trash can. So you can throw stuff away.
It's a pretty clean place. Today, all of my family that lives in Southern California, which is many, my brother and my sister and their kids and their spouses, they all have season passes to Disney. So whenever we go out there and spend some time there. That's how much we love it.
Nice. Well, let me know next time you're out. We also have the passes and can meet you down there. My wife would love any excuse to get down there to Disneyland. So at San Diego, so you went to San Diego State, moved over to Deloitte. Which practice were you in at Deloitte? In the audit side?
Actually, I started what was called the Emerging Business Services practice, and I was based out of Costa Mesa, California. And the reason I went and took that position was because I got offered the job to start in that group right out of college. And for me, it was exactly what I was looking for. I didn't want to be an auditor of Floor Daniels or Union 76 or some big giant Fortune 500 company. I really wanted to be able to get my hands around everything. And so my clients ranged anywhere from most of them were like 150 million and smaller, and many just startup type companies. So I did everything from little system implementations to tax work, to audit work, of course, financial statements, private placements, even small IPOs. So it was a really good experience for me. And probably some of the best 5 years of my career in terms of learning experience. I always said that those 5 years with Deloitte were like my MBA.
Yeah, that's really cool. You got that type of experience. I'm curious, in the moment, did you realize how valuable it was going to be later, or was it just a grind at the time and with no light at the end of the tunnel?
I think I was one of those strange guys that really enjoyed it. I really loved public accounting. And I knew I was working with some of the best and brightest people. People that I worked with, I learned so much from. And when you realize that, it's when you take your first job out of public accounting, and all of a sudden you're like, for me, I was an assistant controller with a little roll-up company called Eco, and all of a sudden you realize that the difference of people that you're working with is dramatic. Right, all of a sudden, the types of people that you're working with are completely different, and you have to really learn how to adjust very quickly in terms of how to work with all those types of folks and kind of how to manage those folks, motivate those folks. It's a completely different environment.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that way before, but you're totally spot on. And I ask these questions because I know we have some auditors who listen to the show, and that's a big audience of ours. And I know that oftentimes it can feel very, daunting. You can be jaded about the job and lose sight of just how much you're learning and the great people that you're working with. And so for anyone who's, doing that kind of work at a firm, whether it's audit or business advisor or whatever, and you're working a lot of hours and it might seem like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, you're getting very good experience and you're working with great people. So try to enjoy it in the moment, because in 10 years, when you're not there anymore, you're going to reflect on it. It's going to be a good time in your career.
Yeah, and the other great thing about Deloitte, and I'm sure about many of the other firms, I mean, they do such a good job of maintaining their alumni groups that for me, it's a real good source, and has been throughout my career of, great camaraderie, mentorship, people I could go to and ask questions of. It's been very, very helpful.
Awesome. Well, all right. So it sounds like you had a good run through the Big Four. That's awesome. And then you moved into an assistant controller role. Can I hear a little bit more about that job? And then we'd just love to get to career progression as well.
Oh yeah, assistant controller was fun. I implemented. This company was in the process of selling off divisions, and so we did system implementations to create new systems for each of the divisions that had previously been all consolidated into one business. And
interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Right. And then we were selling divisions. So the whole purpose of why I was there was to help position each of these businesses to be sold. And so that was really an interesting experience for me. I learned a ton there. And then ultimately kind of took that business through like that ultimate transition, and worked my way into a way that I could like exit that, take a little time off. I actually got to go travel through Europe for a couple months after that position, which was great.
Awesome.
And then came back with a full beard. I was like a total disaster mess, hair out to here and beard. And I actually went
you were loving life. Yeah.
I went on interviews like that and ended up going to work for a company called Liner Health Products, which was a over-the-counter drug and vitamin manufacturing company. So the one business, two businesses in my career that weren't specifically software and technology. And that was another 5 years of career that similar, got my first exposure to private equity in that role. I was the director of planning and tax. So it was an interesting combination, but that's when I kind of started to sink my teeth into stuff that really wasn't just the basic accounting, but started to do more the strategic planning and other budgeting activities around a fairly large $350 million business. So that was fun.
Well, I can see how you made the moves to get to the CFO position. You're doing consulting early on, did like a stint in the controllership, and then went broader with strategy, right, finance, and taxation. And then you got that's a really good foundation for the CFO role. And
then ultimately back into technology, which is my first love and really the stuff that I had focused on in public accounting. And then I was with a company called Wonderware, which is an industrial automation software business. And that's the business where I ultimately became CFO. And really and what I want to really, Matt, say about each of those different companies that I was at up to that point, I had really good mentors. And so for me, it's always been important to both have a good mentor, but then also to be a good mentor for other people and see other people get promoted into CFO roles. And so I take a lot of enjoyment out of that in my career.
And so who were some of your, who was the most influential mentor for you coming up?
Well, at Deloitte, there was a partner named Fred Posca, who was probably the best guy that I ever worked for. He and I were really close friends, and he helped me through that entire 5 years of kind of growth and kind of what was important then. And then at Liner Health Products, I had a CFO. Her name was Diane Beardsley, who was amazing. I think I still use components of kind of that reporting package that we created way back then in the way that I look at businesses today. And then at Wonderware, Sam Ariyama. Sam was my CFO when I first started at Wonderware before ultimately he left and I became CFO. And I learned a ton from all those people, and they were very, very important to me. And then since then, in my private equity world, I've had some just great teams of people that I've worked with in the private equity space. And you realize how much more you can learn in each individual role with each company. And how different people look at businesses, how different people see different things that are important to help those businesses grow and achieve their goals and objectives.
So I want to just circle back to Wonderware real quick before we proceed forward. So you got to the CFO role at Wonderware. Was that a discussion that you had with the current CFO while he was still in that position? Like, hey, like, was there succession planning that went into that?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me more about that process?
Well, we were a public company. I was the corporate controller that had responsibilities both for like the accounting function and the planning and strategic planning and budgeting process. And we had grown from about the time that I got there from about maybe 60 million to 100 million revenues. And we were in the process of the company ultimately got sold to a large British industrial controls company, Invensys. Okay. And at that time, when we were sold, Sam decided that he didn't want to be part of a big $8 billion industrial controls company. And he highly recommended me to be the CFO of our division. But what that turned into was being the CFO of all their software companies. So it wasn't just the $100 million Wonderware business. It became like a $350 million software business with other businesses that had been acquired to put together software.
Okay, so they carved out multiple entities for you to oversee within the bigger, I don't know if conglomerate's the right term, but within a larger entity.
Closer within the larger entity. That's exactly right.
Okay.
Right. And so that worked out really well for a couple of us, actually. My chief revenue officer, Joe Cowan, became the chief executive officer of that software entity. And I became the chief financial officer of that larger software entity. And so if it hadn't been for Sam making that strong recommendation for me, I'm not sure I'd be here today as a CFO. I mean, that was a really major stepping stone for me in my career.
I think that's a theme I've heard on this podcast, is a lot of promotion into the CFO role through succession planning. And that's how a lot of people get their first kind of shot at the job. It's much easier than just being a VP of finance or a controller who's out interviewing for your first CFO role. It feels like the more reasonable path is that promotion.
Yeah, I think you have to put yourself at the right place, the right time, and have the right experience level. It's a little bit about timing, right? And it's a little bit about what your background is and how you've been, how you've been able to show yourself within that organization during some period of time.
Right.
It's really key.
Yeah, because if you can build up trust, around the organization and yourself, it becomes a really easy decision.
Right. It was very natural. It was a very natural transition for all of us. So it was great.
So how did you get recruited over to your next company?
Well, I had been with Wonderware for about 7+ years, almost 8 years. And it was around the 2002 .com crash timeframe. And there were a lot of people out looking for positions. And I had decided that it was time for me to do something outside of a large industrial conglomerate. And then I needed to go back to my roots of being with a company that I could kind of put my hands around. And, fortunately for me at that time, I got a friend of mine who was a CFO of another company in the healthcare space, became the CFO of a company called Mariner Healthcare based out here in Atlanta. And he knew I was looking for a new challenge. And he asked me to think about moving to Atlanta and being his chief accounting officer for a $1 billion nursing home company. Okay. So we've operated 300 nursing homes and 15 long-term acute care hospitals around the country. It was obviously a much larger business. And we owned all the real estate we operated, which was a unique position to be in.
Yeah.
And so I saw that as a really interesting challenge. And I convinced my wife to go on this great big adventure and move with me from Tustin Ranch near Irvine, California, out to Atlanta. And all my friends thought we were crazy, but ultimately we got here to Atlanta, and that ended up being a great experience. Probably one of the more complicated businesses I've ever been with, both in terms of operations and then ultimately in terms of the sale process when we sold the business.
Oh, okay.
Because it ended up being mostly a real estate transaction, so that was kind of interesting.
So yeah, because then you're getting into there are nuanced tax requirements around, real estate. I know enough to know I don't know everything about how all that works. But yeah, I could see that being super complicated. And how does private equity, how do they, I guess, was that their focus? Was real estate companies, that specific firm, or was this a little out of their purview?
Yeah, this wasn't a private equity thing. So Mariner was a public company.
Oh, okay. Still publicly traded. Got it.
But we were acquired by a REIT So think about that. So a real estate entity bought the company, and then we created a real estate entity for the ownership of the real estate, and we created an operating entity for the operations of the nursing home business.
Okay. And did that allow you to capture, better tax savings through structuring that way?
It was incredibly complicated. I've forgotten more of that transaction, but I learned so much from it. It's just incredible. It was literally one of the most complicated transactions.
Okay.
But it ended up being the Mariner Healthcare experience here in Atlanta was basically a little bit more than 2 years of my life. That probably was about 5 years of real time in terms of actual working.
Yeah.
And then I got.
That's the benefit to working a lot of hours is you get more experience in a shorter period of time, right? That's the upside.
Exactly. and then in 2006 is when I kind of really started the full swing into private equity. And that's when I went to work for Surgical Information Systems and the guys from Vista Equity Partners.
Okay. So it started with Vista was the first firm you were working with?
Well, there was private equity at Liner Health Products, and there was some private equity at Mariner Healthcare, but more from a REIT perspective. And then, but really in the technology space with Vista and Surgical Information Systems in 2006 was in earnest. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, tell me more about that one.
Well, CIS was we did the perioperative surgical suite of a hospital. So all the software in documenting what happens within the surgical suite, from scheduling to anesthesia information flow and all the doctor and nursing documentation of what's happened during surgery, both pre-op, intra-op, and post-op. And we sold to all the largest hospital chains and hospitals across the country.
Okay.
And so it was a great run. We took that business from a $20 million business to a $60 million business, and ultimately had a really great equity transaction for my friends at Vista to another private equity firm, which ended up working out really well.
Okay.
And then I ended up leaving Surgical Information Systems to go to Baumgar, which was a TA business. And 2 years to the day there, we increased that business, I don't know, from around 80 million to over 100 million, and then had a very quick sale on that because of the timing in the market and what we had done with that business. Baumgar was a remote support and kind of a little bit of a security play product that we had at Baumgar. And then from Baumgar, I went to another company called Excella, and then ultimately to MRI. And now I'm at OnSolve. And in all those instances, except for one, I was lucky enough to be able to take them to an equity transaction, which was really nice. That's
awesome. And so Baumgar is where our paths started to cross through a shared board member, Rob Meinhardt, right? So would love to kind of in the mentorship, back to the mentorship portion of the discussion. He's been one of my top mentors in founding Flowcast and moving through it. So would love to hear what it was like in the CFO seat, having him as a board member.
Rob was one of the most creative board members and most energetic board members I think I've ever worked with. I mean, he's spectacular.
Yeah.
And, he had great success with his business and was able to really parlay, or rather, help us to take some of his experiences and implement them at Baumgar. And then he introduced me to you guys. And I'll never forget when he was talking about Flowcast, I was like, oh my God, every company needs this. Why hasn't this happen sooner? We all need more improvements in terms of how we get to deal with our weekly lives here in the accounting organization. And I was like, absolutely, this is a great business. That was the first time that I got to work with Flowcast, was at Baumgar.
Yeah, I remember that call. It went really well. In fact, I think it went so well, we should probably disclose that you ultimately became an investor in Flowcast as a result of liking the product so much, right?
Very small, but it was so exciting, and you guys have done so well. I'm so excited about it.
Well, you got in at a really good price, so I'm happy.
Right.
I'm very happy for you. It's going to work out well. But yeah, would love to. So now you've gone through, so you've had a few stints with different private equity companies. And I know a big part of it is when you get to a company, there's some cleanup that has to occur. I'm sure you're, hiring a new team, you're bringing new people on board, systems, processes. So over your various stints, have you developed any philosophies around team building, process optimization, anything like that? Would just love to hear the overall feedback.
Yeah. It's really interesting. It's all about making sure that you have the best team you can have. And making sure that everybody understands that when you move to being in a company that's being invested in by the private equity world, that the pace of play is going to go it's going to pick up a little bit, and people need to understand that. So if traditionally they've been more in an investor, founder-led business, that when you get more professional investors behind the business, then obviously the pace of play, the level of questions, the amount of information that you have to provide just kind of steps up. And so people across the organization, and especially within finance, sales operations, marketing organizations, all need to understand, and even in development technology areas need to understand that the level of inspection is going to be a little bit higher. So you need to be prepared for that. And that's really probably the most critical thing. And then, like I said earlier, I think the other really critical thing is that you can keep learning, right? I mean, these folks in private equity have run a lot of businesses, and so they have a tremendous amount of experience. And so as long as you realize that you can keep learning, but that was the first thing when I went to work for Vista Equity Partners. Here I had been CFO, been with a technology business for over 7+ years, wondered where we grew the business really well. I thought we really knew how to run a software business, but there was so much more that you could learn, and that we learned in terms of how to do best practices really in running a software/SaaS business that I kept learning, and I continue to keep learning at every stop. So it's I think that's a really important mindset to have.
I agree. I've spent a little bit of time with the Vista operations team, and I'm really impressed with what they do and how they think about things and the experience they have. Have there been a couple tidbits you picked up from them that you kind of applied across multiple businesses?
At every stop, I take those tidbits from Vista. I like to say that at Surgical Information Systems, we were really part of their first fund. And so I like to say we helped create a lot of
you were helping the
Vista standard operating principles. So it was really, really a lot of fun. But some of those things about how to hire, who to hire, and making use of all the resources you can in terms of testing and understanding the best qualities of a person to hire into different parts of the organization. We really they did a lot in their own. We take a lot of those best practices and use them on a go-forward basis.
It's funny you should say that. That was the part that was my biggest takeaway as well, was the hiring strategy. And so I have my take on it, which might have changed over the years. What did you learn about hiring from them? What was their strategy?
Well, you should always be hiring, number one, and you should always be hiring to create a really good layer of entry-level, high-qualified, high-potential people. And so the key is to hire those high potential people from the right sources in the right areas. I mean, you don't necessarily need to go out and hire from Harvard or Yale or Stanford, but you can hire from San Diego State, Kennesaw State, and the local universities. Find the right people with the right energy level, the right aptitude that are going to help your business grow and expand over a period of time. That's really what I picked up from the guys at Vista. We really implemented that to a T in Surgical Information Systems.
That has not changed in over a decade. It has an acronym now. I think it's HEPL or something. High potential entry level employee.
High potential entry level. Right.
Yep.
Right.
Totally. And I love it. It makes so much sense to hire someone who's smart and hardworking and give them a shot to figure stuff out. And I would say that's particularly relevant in software, because one of the odd things I've noticed is a lot of the jobs in software companies, there's actually no major for that job. Like you look at sales, there's no major for sales, there's no major for customer support. And those are two of the biggest functions generally within a company. And so it's like, take a risk on someone, let them figure this stuff out and focus on maybe that entry level and potential, not so much current, resume.
Yeah. And then I guess the other major thing that I take away from all that is that, know as much as you can about your customer base. So have as much information as you can in and around your customer database. Know everything there is to know. And what is there? Who are the key people there? What are the pieces and parts of your system that they own? What are the pieces and parts of your systems that they don't own? Understand that complete model and what drives them, and make sure that data is up to date and accurate as much as possible. And then expand that database and use your Salesforce implementation to really its maximum in terms of really being able to, focus in on what are the key parts and where are your opportunities to continue to have those upsells in those organizations. That's really important.
Yeah. And I wanted to shift gears to your current company. You were telling me a little bit about what you did when we were preparing for the podcast. We were walking through your current company. I thought what you did was really cool. So just wanted to give you an opportunity to chat about that a little bit, what OnSolve does.
Right. I've been with OnSolve since the beginning of the pandemic, since about April of 2020. And what we do is we provide the infrastructure in and around how to manage around critical event management and risk management of physical assets. We help chief security officers and the CXO suites really manage the risk, the physical risks in and around their people, at places, and their assets around the world. So, like as an example, some of our clients are, like ExxonMobil has assets all around the country and all around the world. So if there's like a large weather event might be happening coming to one of their refineries or something, they need to know about that in advance. And so our risk intelligence product helps provide all that data, puts it on one center console so everybody can see where those risks are and what's happening in and around a particular area. And the chief risk officer can then take action to help notify everybody in that area. Hey, there's the hurricane that's coming. Let's make sure we do X, Y, and Z and communicate with each other to make sure all these actions are taking place. So that's what we do within us, OnSolve. And we really help protect lives and assets. And it's a really important thing. It's a real mission-driven place. Our people are really passionate about it. And it's a really great place to be.
Yeah, and you were giving me a couple examples, like the earthquake in Turkey. I thought was especially interesting. So, can you tell me more about how it would have been used and who
yeah, so immediately there would be a notification within our risk intelligence that uses an AI-powered product that's taking in data sources from 25,000 different news data sources around the world, and we would immediately notify that and say, "Oh, this is a big event that's happening in this area," and then it would be correlated to where you have physical assets and or people in those areas. Mm-hmm. You could draw a fence around that and then immediately send out an emergency notification to all your people in those areas to take these actions, and to communicate both ways so that incident management can be monitored and make sure everything's okay.
I'm picturing is your software this like big map where you can.
That's exactly right.
It is a map where you're just seeing what's going on.
That's exactly right. I love seeing our folks do demonstrations of our product, and they throw the map up there, and you can see, so for instance, if you're a company that has, different offices around the world, you can see where all those offices are, and if anything particular is happening in one particular area. Like for instance, there's a demonstration, just even there might be some kind of a political demonstration happening in and around your offices. Well, you can send a notification to your people. There's a political demonstration happening in and around your office. You might want to take steps to avoid any traffic or other things that are going to be impacting your life in that particular area. To that level, it's really important to be able to protect your people.
And is there a specific vertical that really benefits from your software?
It's really very wide. So we are in about 50% of the Fortune 100. We're in about 40% of the Fortune 500, and we're in 10,000 communities, municipalities around the United States. Oh, most of our companies are based here in the U.S. We do a little bit of international business, but of course, all of those businesses that are based here in the U.S. have international presence, and so we help them manage all that space around the world.
So it feels like this company has massive potential. What's the when you were recruited in, what was the vision that you were pitched?
Well, I mean, we were growing, and we're still really growing. Like the business grows pretty well. I mean, we do. Probably about 15%, new upsell and new bookings a year on top of what we're already doing. Yeah. And so the business is growing tremendously, and certainly the pandemic helped that growth. And it's just about continuing to do that. And then it's a real platform business. We can add other pieces and parts into it in and around that whole incident management or that risk area. We can continue to add more functionality around. And there's a lot of growth potential.
And is that an organic software build approach, or are you doing some M&A to build out the platform?
It's a little bit of both. We did do a little bit of M&A back in 2021, and we'll probably do more M&A as the business continues to grow.
Okay, I'd love to. So when you had mentioned at a prior company, you were kind of splitting apart the software to sell off pieces, and which I've never heard of that before. What's easier? Is it easier consolidating technology and getting everyone into one instance, or starting to split them apart for sales?
I think they both have interesting complications. The company I was at prior to OnSolve, we did probably 10 or 11 acquisitions a year. That business was in the real estate software basis. So we did software for both commercial real estate and residential real estate operations, and ERP, basic ERP, and then anything in and around the operations of that real estate. And that was just as much fun. I think I enjoyed the acquisition piece more than the selling piece. It's a little bit more fun.
Yeah, and I guess you're growing at that point. You're not divesting. It's just a high level of something more excited to be a part of. So, okay, you joined during the pandemic. I'd love to hear about, having a team through all of that, kind of ramping that up. Can we touch on the people side of OnSolve?
That's a really good question. So I started here at OnSolve in April, and the pandemic had pretty much already started. I don't think I met in person my team physically in person probably for 6 months.
Wow. Until
finally we had some people that were here in Atlanta that we were decided, hey, let's just get together at a park. I mean, that was kind of the extremes of the pandemic. I think back to it, how crazy that is, but that's how we had to meet back.
And was everyone in the Atlanta area working from home, or do you have a remote organization?
No, we have offices around the country. Our primary financial locations are here in Atlanta and down near Daytona Beach in Florida. In a town called Ormond Beach. Those are the two primary focuses. But I'd say during the course of the pandemic, we've probably hired more people kind of just about anywhere. We really haven't focused on hiring in any one particular area. I mean, when we can, we'll hire here in Atlanta or in Ormond Beach. But when we find the right person, we don't shy away from hiring the right person now, because really this is the way that we're interacting on a regular basis. So it's really not unusual for us.
And were you comfortable with remote before COVID, or did COVID throw you into that mentality?
No, you have to remember. I mean, like prior to OnSolve, I mean, I've been with companies that had offices all over the world. Okay, and we had already been using systems like Slack and Zoom to a great extent. I mean, when I first met you, I was based here in Atlanta, and my team from Baumgar was based in Jackson, Mississippi, and so I was traveling there probably on more of a regular basis. But I was also communicating via Zoom on a regular basis most.
Oh, okay.
So it really wasn't completely new, but the amount of time that we spent on this kind of interaction was obviously much more focused and a lot more, because we weren't traveling at all.
Yeah, and I know. So when we started working together at OnSolve, the close was, I think, a couple weeks long was what you're looking at, and you made some all-star hires and were able to improve that process. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I can't take credit for all of that. In fact, most of the credit goes to my controller, Larry Grimm, and our assistant controller, Myra Rico. They're really the superstars. Myra in particular, she really took Flowcast and made it sing for us. And Myra will sing Flowcast's praises, but I will sing Myra's praises, because Myra really took our close from probably an 18, 20-day cycle to literally like a 5-day cycle, which now gives us the ability to kind of really analyze the results, understand it, tweak it, and then by the 8th or 9th or 10th business day, we're able to report out, on a pretty regular basis in terms of what those financial statements look like. It really gives both the accounting team and the financial planning team a lot more time to be able to put together a much better and quality product on a monthly basis, so that the organization gets a lot more insights into what's going on versus just spitting out the numbers and then immediately starting to close for the next cycle kind of thing, right? And it makes everybody's life more fun. People enjoy their job a little bit more when they can get things done quickly, and they can start doing those higher level analytical exercises than just the basic blocking and tackling of the close, right?
Yeah, when you're not perpetually closing, it's much better work environment.
Right. It's a much better work environment, which leads to better retention, which leads to just a much better team overall across, at least for our organization here within accounting and financial.
That's so hard now. Employee retention, team building, and everything. So you're telling me a shorter close helped with all that?
I absolutely believe that. And I'll tell you, it's harder now, now that we're more remote, to create that loyalty too. When you're remote, you don't see the person. You can't go out and take them to lunch every day, that kind of thing. When you walk out the door, you don't get a chance to say hello and just kind of see what's going on. You're always just kind of stepping into a meeting that's like this. It's just right away. And so those personal connections are harder and harder to achieve. But of course, if you aren't working on just the basic blocking and tackling, and you're working on something that's a little bit more interesting and analytical, and not as much of a time focused or delay or deadline kind of focused environment, then it just becomes more fun.
And what are some of those analytical projects that the accounting team is able to focus on now?
Oh, the team is much better. Like we have a really great relationship with our dev teams. We have a really good relationship with the marketing organization. We have a really good relationship with sales operations.
Okay.
We can analyze our bookings in a much better way. We can analyze the pipeline in a much better way. We can do better forecasting. We can do better understanding of our gross and net retention, what's driving those things. And then we can also, from a dev perspective, really get into the production operations and understand how can we tweak some things to help maybe reduce some of our hosting costs and just things that kind of bring value to the business in a much better way. When you have those relationships with those operators within your organization versus just always being focused on close, you start to create business relationships and business partnerships, which are just so much more fun.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like oftentimes when we talk about what are the other strategic analytical things accounting can do, it kind of circles back to, more time on a flux analysis or budget to actual understanding this. But what you're talking about is very cool. I mean, that's in the weeds of the company and getting to learn about things that I think the average accountant probably never thought they'd be learning about engineering throughput and how to optimize, what's getting pushed. But it sounds like that's kind of the level that your team's able to get to now.
In different companies, when I've been parts of different parts of the company, if you think of the whole general administrative organization between accounting, financial planning, tax, legal, HR, maybe property, fixed assets, leasing, that kind of thing. All those things. If you put all that together, those organizations touch and feel just about every part within the organization, and so we all have to be thinking about our worlds as being a partner to all those other organizations, help them achieve their goals and objectives. That's really what our role is. We have to do our best to help all those pieces and parts of the companies achieve their goals and objectives. And so if we can be a better partner with those groups, then I feel like we're doing, number one, we're going to help the company achieve where we want to go. But number two, it's just going to be a lot more fun. And you're going to learn a lot.
I'll say, so we at Flowcast, we've had our sales kind of strategy team on finance now for a little while. And it's been really cool seeing how I'll now see various leaders around the sales organization. Now it's like, oh, let me go to the finance team to talk about that and get support. And it's just, that's now where they go to get the data. It's their trusted source of how do I get better at what I'm doing and really focus on things. And I think 10 years ago, you would not have thought that type of function would live under the office of the CFO, right? Which is such a cool shift in the job and way more interesting.
I've been doing this a while now, and I've had mentors that have said kind of what I just said to me for the last 20 years. We all want to be better partners with the organization, and obviously as close cycles have gotten shorter and systems have become more sophisticated, then we can provide some of those more added things that truly, maybe we were doing a lot in Excel 20 years ago, we're doing maybe a little less now in Excel, or maybe the things that we're doing in Excel now are more added value than basic blocking.
Okay, so let's get super tactical for a minute. I know, I think the reaction can be from a lot of departments, what is accounting doing here? What is finance doing here? Why I don't want to talk to them. How were you able to kind of culturally make that change and have people come to accounting as a means of like getting their job done better or faster, as opposed to being viewed as the office of no, right? Is oftentimes the thing that is kind of lobbed on the CFO. So how did you just culturally shift that and get everyone excited about working with the team?
We just had a meeting before I stepped into this meeting. I just had a meeting with a large group of people where we were looking at making an investment into a different line of business, and they were coming to my VP of finance, who's in charge of planning and budgeting and strategic planning, and asking him, how best can we present this to our investor group to get the approval to move forward? That's how that meeting was structured. It wasn't us going to them saying, oh, by the way, why is this way and why is this way and how come this didn't happen the way that you told me? It was them coming to us saying, hey, how can we structure this investment in a way that makes the most sense? So we really are partners. And to me, that's the fun part of the job. Right? That's how we should be viewed within the organization.
And was that sort of always the culture, or did that develop after your team had more time to start performing that type of work?
Yeah, I'd say that over time, as we have more time to do those things, then certainly the company feels more comfortable coming to us for that. But you got to establish that as kind of a baseline. That's what we're here for. We're here to be your partner.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And
you're there to help, right? Not tell
We're,
someone how to do your job. You're there to support them and just help. Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. That's what we strive for. I mean, we don't get there every day. I'm not the best at it every day, but at least a little bit. We get a little bit better every day. Then hopefully we can really make a difference.
Oh yeah, incremental improvement. That's the best way to do it for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, so I'll say, at Flowcast, we definitely think accounting is at the center of the organization and can provide a lot of operational help, and you guys are living that. So that's really cool to see. Have you used Flow? I don't want to speak on the Flowcast pitch, but has it been helpful in working with those other departments through any of the workflows, or just focus on the close?
Yeah, I would say we haven't designed that I'm aware of. We need to talk with Myra to ask her about this, but we haven't designed any major workflows using Flowcast that go out beyond the accounting close. Now, some of it touches other organizations. So like production ops definitely has to give us certain information to make sure we're doing the right accruals at the end of each month. And then we have to get certain information from engineering and development in and around how we record capitalized R&D and all that kind of thing. So certainly there are pieces and parts that touch the organization. But the primary users of Flowcast are in the accounting and financial planning organizations, at least today.
Yeah.
That's something that we should be striving to really push out across the whole organization.
Yeah, and I think there are areas where it overlaps. Like you just mentioned them, commission statement prep on the sales ops side.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are areas where there's so much collaboration. It makes sense. But it's awesome to hear that the team is doing much more fun work now as a result of all this. So with that, do you find that's feeding into better retention of the team and just overall team happiness?
Yeah, I do. I feel like the team is definitely operating in a very high way. And we haven't had a lot of turnover in the last year. Certainly, you're going to have opportunistic people that are looking to go achieve something that maybe they can't achieve within a 300 or 400 person company. Some people might be needing to go to a much larger company where there might be other opportunities or things like that. But we haven't had anybody leave because they're just dissatisfied with what they're doing.
Right.
So definitely seen some improvement.
Yeah. Can't get mad at someone for taking a different opportunity and progression and all that. Just got to be a little proud of it.
Well, exactly. We're always excited for that to happen.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're reaching the end of our time here. This has been a really good conversation for the audience. So we've covered off on team building, structuring companies, acquisitions, divestitures. I'm curious if there's just anything you want to leave the audience with, on from your perspective, what's a good piece of advice for building a great company, a great team? What do you think is most impactful?
I just think being open in lines of communication. So in today's world where we're so remote, I try to tell people that, use that Slack button to do a quick Slack phone call with me as much as you can. Don't hesitate just to push that button. If I see it open up and I'm available, I'll get in, or I'll immediately Slack and say I can be available in 5 minutes. I try to use that as like the door in the office, because that's the environment that we're in a little bit. And I think those moments where you can really be there for your people on a moment's notice is really important. So that would be like my greatest advice over the last 2 or 3 years of going through this process of having more people being more and more remote. To be open to that, like if you get a little slack and then immediately get back to people and have an immediate response. It's important.
Yeah. Well, I'll say I'm not good at the hit the little phone button thing and call me, but I think that's a great piece of advice, and I'm going to change that. And I'm going to tell my team to just hit the phone and call me real quick to sort through issues, because it can happen so much faster than having to type everything.
Type and answer, right? Exactly.
You got tone, things get lost over messages and everything. So cool. Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to take that piece of advice and implement that.
Well, I appreciate it. I hope it all works out great for you. Listen, I always enjoy our conversations, Mike. This has been fantastic.
Likewise, Bruce. Well, thank you for hopping on the podcast. Thank you for your support as an investor, a customer, everything. It's been great working with you, and so really appreciate all your support.
And thank you guys for all your support. We're looking forward to all the additional things that are coming out of Flowcast and how you can help our group be even more efficient. So thanks.
Awesome. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day, Bruce. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.